All right, I'm back on the buggy. Wanted to do a little fabrication video today. I'm taking a break on this chassis, and I'm going to start another chassis. And this time I'm making it out of DOM, and I've got it on the trailer. But I want to do a video on doing a good job your first shot. I tend to just kind of start cutting metal and start bending, and I end up making a lot of mistakes. And I made a video on saving metal from making mistakes, and want to show a way, not necessarily the way, but a way to try to do a better job if you're trying to do this stuff and take a little bit more time and layout, and as a result you'll probably have better luck with the finished product and less waste. But so what I've got is I did it with tape. It depends how precise you want to get. You can do this with soapstone or sidewalk chalk or whatever you want, but what your objective is like, here's the print for the roll bar, and what you want to do is draw a box. This will work on a race car, drag car. There's my cat. Drag car, anything you want to do. What you need to do is basically measure your widest points where you want your roll bar, and draw a square out on the floor that coincides with those measurements, and that's going to be the very outside of your bar. So like I said, you can either just draw a square on the floor with soapstone, or I like the phrase aim small, miss small. And I feel like when you give yourself a smaller target, like just a line, a pin line, that you're going to have a higher rate of success and more precision in it. But basically, you could also spray paint on the floor some lines and then scribe it with a pick or a screwdriver, and you just need a long straight edge. I used a piece of inch flat iron to draw my lines, but the tape, in my instance, you could have used tape to lay it out, but I used it just to give me something to draw a fine line on, so that I'm trying to hit this really close. I always try to do a better job every time I do one. But what's going to happen here is I'm going to go ahead and lay the tube out according to the prints, and then I'm going to bend, probably going to go ahead and bend one side, and then I'll mark my center line on my tube. I'll go ahead and make a quick video, or not quick video, but I will add that in. But you take a test bend, lay that all, or figure all that stuff out with your test bend where your bends need to be. Like, I'm going off a print, so I don't have to do quite as much work. I still need to do a test bend in case there's any corrections, but bend up one side, and then if you marked your tube in the center and you bend up one side and you lay it down in the square, you're going to have roll bar coming up, and then it's going to go wild off to the right. But you line your tube up over here on this side where you want it, and then compare your center lines. And if your center line's off an inch one way or the other, now's the time to correct for that. And you need to double it, but like, let's say for some reason you missed it by an inch and your center line's over here, then you need to add 2 inches to the distance between these bends to get this side where it's going to be, because 1 inch of correction is going to be to visually move that back to the correct center line, and then the 2nd inch is going to be to correct for the other side. So you need to double whatever dimension you're off here. But it will greatly improve your odds of not screwing this up, and you still need some knowledge of bending, and you're still going to make mistakes, but this is a way. Like I said, this is the time to correct it. This is where a crappy fitting roll bar in a drag car versus a tight fitting one, this is where you correct it. If you just go out there, lay it all out, bend it all, and you get what you get, there's an odds, that it may be an inch narrow or an inch wide, and nobody wants that. So like I said, this gives you a kind of a second chance without actually having to screw any tubing up. But I always find that the other thing is, if you make a mistake, to do it the same on both sides. Like, if your bend down here is a half an inch or an inch higher than you want it, and you decide you can live with that, don't correct that bend on this side, because now you'll have you correct it, and now this one's down an inch, that one's up an inch, and that's going to be noticeable. Nobody's going to notice if they're both off by the same amount. If it's an amount you can live with, just do the same thing on the other side. But like I said, you can at least correct your width by doing this. So let me get some tubing laid out and we'll go from there. Okay, I got my tube laid out. I lay out from the center and work out. That way, like I said, it lets me do this in stages and I can correct for it. Now, if you know your bender well enough and you're making the same bars, you can actually bend from one direction all the way through, and you can put a plane of bend gauge on it, which I have one of those, but I hardly ever use. I just eyeball it. But you can bend straight through. But it seems to me like the bends aren't symmetrical the way they crimp the tube, and to me it looks better to have it all bent out the same way on both sides, because I don't know if I can really give an example, but it just doesn't quite crimp the tube the same as it starts to bend. And I just feel like it looks better this way, like I said, and it lets me give me time for correction. But anyways, to lay the tube out, what I did is, you got to figure out how much tube it's going to take per degree. That's called material take up. And the way you do that is the diameter, or the radius of the die, which is a 5-inch die, times that times 2 to get your diameter, which is 10, and then take that times pi, and divide that by 360, and what that gives you is 87 thousandths per degree. So I know I need to go 62 degrees on one bend and 49 on the other. So you take your 62 degrees times 87 thousandths, and you end up with basically 4 1/4. But what this is my theoretical start of my bend and my end of my bend. That's going to be the material in the bend. And then you measure from the start of that, or end of that bend, to the start of your next bend. And that's going to be the material take up in the second bend, and then this is going to be the down leg for that side. I like to mark where I'm bending because I can't tell you how many times I've got everything set up and then bent towards the center, and you just immediately ruin the piece of tubing. So anything I can do to try to idiot-proof this stuff and keep from screwing up, especially on stuff that's $200 a stick or $250. So anyways, that's how I lay that stuff out. I'm going to go ahead and bend one side and lay it in my square, and then we'll see how much we need to, or if we even need to correct, because the prints are actually for a different radius die than mine, and I'm kind of correcting for it. It's not off by much. Honestly, not even enough that I'm going to worry about, but I'm going to put her in there and see where we end up at on one side, and then we will correct for that on this side, which means if I've got to move that first bend down, that means I got to move my second bend down. So you got to remember that too, otherwise you're going to end up with a bend that's high on one side, because once you move this out, then you've shrunk the distance between those two bends, and if you don't move that one out the same amount, you're going to end up with a problem. And if you're off by very much, depending on how close you cut your tubing, always cut your tubing long, but if you're off by very much, then you're going to end up with a long leg on that side, because if you're off by an inch, well, it's only an inch long on that side, but it's going to be 2 inches short on this side, so you got to make sure you got plenty of material. But I got a pretty good feeling I'm going to hit this one first go, so we'll see how it goes. All right, so here's what I got. That's my center line on my tube lined up with the center line of my my box, and of course the tube is lined up on the center line height-wise. I'm about 1/4 of an inch wide, and where that got me at was right here. The bend started behind I lined up my line with the leading edge of the follower die, and it started just a little bit behind it, so it grew on me a little bit there. And then down here I'm overbent just about an inch probably, which isn't too bad. I can take that back out of it pretty easy. I got a way to, if you heat this corner right here and then quench it with water, it will pull that back a few degrees, or a degree or better. That's about all it is probably a degree or two. So I think I'm going to bend the other side exactly the same and see how we end up. I may cheat it just a little bit. Not going to be enough to need to correct down there really. Just cheat them both 1/4 of an inch or so to make sure I don't end up a 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch overall too wide. So I'm pretty good with that. I'm going to go ahead and bend it and see where it ends up at. Okay, we are pretty well. All right, we're set on the center up here, and then I took a 1/4 inch out of it, so we're dead net there. And then I actually had to bend that one twice the first time, and so I think that's part of why that's off so far down here. I went to 42 degrees instead of 49. And sometimes if you don't take your time getting stuff set up on that second, when you go back in and bend it, it don't end up perfect. So that's what got me there. If I would have done it to 49 the first shot, that side would have been just as close as this side is. And that's easily workable. That mark right there is supposed to be the outside of the tube, and it's, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch. This one's dead even. Okay, so I went ahead and heated that a little bit. I took some of it out. It's very much workable. It's not perfect. If I had another one to bend, I could probably just absolutely nail it on the first shot. But I'm pretty okay with this. This stuff's got enough movement in it. The hardest thing to do is to hit with your feet on something that's got 4 bends in it, to hit your feet just dead net, you know. But this stuff has enough flex in it that you can just literally, I mean, it won't be a problem to get that to land. Like I said, my biggest my 2 mistakes was I didn't lead the die quite enough to get my bend on the first mark, and then, like I said, I underbent that one and had to bend it twice, and that's what got me on that one. But like I said, I can still live with that. Any homebrew stuff's not gonna be perfect, but I always try to do the best I can. But like I said, I heated that, quenched it. That pulled it back. It pulled half of it out. I'm within, like I said, that's supposed to be the outside of the tube right there. I'm within 5/8 of an inch on that side and 3/8 of an inch on that side, so it won't be a problem to pull that back at all. It's just a tick out of plane. Some of that's my floor, but I think it's in that bend right there that those 3 seem to be in plane. That one's just a little bit out. But now I know my deducts for the rest of my bends, and I should be able to hit them first shot without even really working that hard at it. I was going to mention, if anybody's looking for something to practice on before you do something important with important tubing, let me run out and show you what was very eye-opening for me. So a friend of mine wanted me to make him some picnic tables, or the legs for a picnic table like this, and I of course was like, yeah, no problem. Well, this is probably one of the most complicated things I've ever done, and getting that, keeping all of these on planes. I think there's, what is there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bends in those, and making them come out. I made a whole bunch of extras. I screwed up so many that I was able to put a table together out of the scrap that I didn't feel was fit to give to him. But if you want something that is good practice and is cheap and isn't critical, you can make something like that, and you'll learn a lot along the way, I promise. It's sometimes figuring out the order of your bends to not get your piece trapped in your bender, or to get a bend done and then you can't do the next one because you're too close to a bend, or like I say, your piece is trapped, or it's gonna come into the bender as it comes around. Like, that was a learning experience building that. So anyways, I hope the video helped on the roll bar thing, and I'm gonna make a couple other videos about tube bending because I kind of enjoy bending. So